All right. We are gonna be doing World War One. I got a few slides in this PowerPoint. I'm not sure. Let's check here real quick. Yeah, there are 58 slides. We got 15 minutes. And basically there's no exam question coming directly out of this PowerPoint. So if you're only viewing these for the exams, you're going to be paying attention to civil rights, you're going to be paying attention to some things that happen in the African American experience. But if you are an American, if you are a citizen of this world we live in, then you should pay attention because World War One is probably the most important war for the way that our world works today, especially in the Middle East. So anyway, let's move on. I think most people know the story of World War One. There's a whole bunch of interlocking alliances. France, Britain, and Russia are allied. Germany and Austria-Hungary are allied. Italy and the Ottoman Empire come in and out of out of alliances, but let's see, at the end of the war, Italy is on the side of France and Britain and Russia, and at the end of the war, the Ottomans are on the side of the Austro-Hungarians and the Germans, and they get a bunch of territory taken away as a result. So the war starts with the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. You know the story, yada, yada, yada. Okay, so we get the rape of Belgium. Germany has war plans. It's called the von Schlieffen Plan, and their plan is that they're going to have to fight a two-front war, so they attack France first, and then they fight Russia. This is similar to what they're going to do in World War II as well, although it's a different plan. In order to get to France first, they have to go through Belgium, and so when the Germans, the Huns, the bastard Huns, go through Belgium, we call it the Rape of Belgium. There's a guy named Herbert Hoover, a little known figure in American politics at the time, but Herbert Hoover goes over and helps direct aid to the Belgians, and he's seen as a real hero in this. But basically what you get is the Huns are evil, Belgium gets obliterated because they are in the way, and Europe is in war. Wilson's running on a platform of neutrality. So Wilson gets elected in 1912. He runs for re-election in 1916. And he says, I'm going to keep us out of war. When he decides to enter the war, he says he's making it safe for democracy. Woodrow Wilson is an incredible idealist, right? He says, neutral in fact as well as in name, impartial in thought as well as in action. Well, boy, I don't know about you, but it's hard for me to keep impartial thoughts out of my brain. Wilson kind of drives me crazy because of his idealism, but we'll see that in just a minute. So let's move quickly. All right, what do we got? Oh, we got an election map. I'm not going to say anything about that. There are people in the country who want to take the country to war. We call it the preparedness movement, but they don't have a lot of support. Germany decides to engage in unrestricted submarine warfare. They announced that in January. In March, there's a telegram that appears where the Germans tell the Mexicans, join the war and you get back the Southwest. And then finally in March, the Russian Tsar is overthrown. Remember, Wilson wants to make the world safe for democracy, but Russia is run by a dictator. So when the dictator's overthrown, it makes it easier for him. So on April 16th, the U.S. declares war on Germany. We have a pacifist as a Secretary of War, another thing that drives me crazy about Wilson. But anyway, this pacifist decides to go ahead and implement the draft. We get a bunch of people going to war. Here I make a joke about their hats. At these training camps, they beat the crap out of each other because, as you can see from this expression and this expression and this expression and this expression and this expression, it's fun to get punched in the face. But seriously, it's also good training. You see the jab, the punching is the same as the bayonet, and this is training for the front lines. And really, it didn't matter because, as the French knew, we need men, and more men. Because basically, what the front lines were in World War I was a great slaughterhouse, right? 2 trenches extending across most of Western Europe, and battles that would last for weeks and months with hundreds of thousands killed in huge artillery exchanges. Really brutal way to die. Brutal way to die that also costs a lot of money. The United States starts lending money to the Allies, a whole bunch of money. This becomes increasingly important in the 20s when we want to get that money paid back. And for Americans, it's also really important because they start investing. They start investing their money into bonds and making rates of return. This is going to be really important in the 1920s when Americans increasingly are are spending money in the stock exchange, right? So World War I, we loan a bunch of money to the Allies, and we also expose our citizens to investing for the first time as a result of that. As I said earlier, Herbert Hoover headed the U.S. Food Administration, and during World War I, it's all voluntary reductions to help support the troops. In World War II, it's going to be different, so pay attention to that, because in this fast-moving class, we'll be in World War II before you know it. Yeah, enough about that. Okay, so we have voluntary efforts, we have propaganda, and I love the fact that in World War II, we now have the immigrants, right, being targets of patriotism. You came to America for the Liberty Bell and the rainbow, the rainbow of freedom. So now help us out. Freedom is what you came here for. Freedom is what you're going to help achieve by saving food. Labor, here's our old friend Samuel Gompers, right? In 1916, we get the 8-hour day, we get a minimum wage, we get equal pay for women. He gives up a few things in the process, but he gets his goals of finally achieving bread and butter unionism, at least for federal contracts. What else about World War II? We got to get over there, right? It's across the Atlantic Ocean. So we have 2 different agencies created to build a bunch of ships. And just like the Germans thought, we do have difficulties getting over there, but we have enough to get troops over there. So we eventually swing the tide of World War I in our favor. Of course, if you're a patriot, you're working at home, you want to have people working hard and working safely. So here we have this lovely image, right? We got the puny sailor, we got the slightly larger soldier, and then we've got the biggest man of all, the guy who's building the ships. So, all right, what do we got? Moving on, we have the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk in March of 1918. That takes Russia out of the war, and it also is an example of the Soviets rising into power. Boy, hang on to that. That'll be fun for most of the rest of the course, the Soviets in power in the Soviet Union. What that means for the immediate war is that now troops can shift to the, what they call the Western Front, the front between British and France. So we need more soldiers. By summer of 1918, the U.S. is coming quickly. We have segregated soldiers. So here we got a bunch of happy African Americans, just happy as they could be, using a shovel, a pickaxe, and a sledgehammer. Is it racist? I say it's racist. How about this one? Using African American soldiers to lug around big pieces of artillery. It looks to me like building the pyramids. All right, moving on. So, by the way, civil rights, we have 367 black soldiers fighting for their country, and when they come back, they can make a claim to citizenship, right? So this is an important part of civil rights in that African Americans are showing they're willing to defend their country. Oh boy, U.S. forces come into action. There's some battles at Cantigny and Belleau Wood where they stop the German advance, and then at the Meuse-Argonne and St. Mihiel, the Allies penetrate the penetrate the German lines. Wham bam, the war is over. First independent attack is in September. It's muddy, it's crappy, it's horrible. It's really horrible. Skulls and wandering around cattle. Women get involved in the movement because they come over as nurses, so that helps out their goals to get suffrage. We have the Hello Girls at the front lines with those helmets. We got the Salvation Army making donuts. I, in class, spend a whole lot more time talking about donuts at the front line. I think that's really radical. We get wounded soldiers and prisoners of war. The war is over. November 11th, 1918, on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. World War I closes. However, for the U.S., I'm sorry, not for the U.S., however, for the German soldiers, there's a few surrenders, but mostly they march back undefeated, and later on, Hitler is going to say that the generals stabbed them in the backs, right? Much about this World War I, Treaty of Versailles, peace. All right, let's talk about it for just a second. Wilson is an incredible idealist. He has all these notions about how the war should be conducted, especially this notion of open diplomacy, no secret alliances. The problem is, of course, that it's hard to negotiate in public. So most of these ideas don't actually come into fruition for lots of different reasons. But Wilson's an idealist and he wants to change the world. Part of the reason we don't get it is because, man, look at these deaths. Look at these killed. Total killed. Whoa, it's a lot, isn't it? Yes, it is a lot. Russia, almost 2 million killed. France, 1.3 million killed. Germany, 1.7 killed. These are the losers, of course. So the winners want to have somebody pay for all this death, all this destruction. The Allies, on total, 5 million killed. So Wilson has the things. Where's Wilson? There's Wilson right there. Wilson has the things he wants. The French have what they want. The Brits have what they want. The Italians are much weaker, but they have what they want. And out of all of this, you get kind of a mangle. So we get self-determination for these countries right here. You get new countries created that are buffer between Germany and the Soviet Union. In the Mideast, when we break up the Ottoman Empire, you don't get countries except for Turkey. Turkey's created as a small country out of the Ottoman Empire, but you get a bunch of mandates. Syria, Palestine, and Iraq. Gee whiz. Do these names strike any sort of chord with current events? Hell yes, they do. All right, so it's a whole nother class. It's a whole nother conversation, but the Middle East gets really reshuffled, let's say, as a result of World War I. And we're still dealing with the after effects of that. Economic consequences of the peace. Germany has to pay incredible reparations. And John Maynard Keynes says this is not going to work. Here is a cartoon of the treaty where over here you have the class in 1940. And it says, curious, I seem to hear a child weeping. Peace and future cannon fodder. So what they're saying in 1920 is that the Treaty of Versailles is going to lead to another war in about 20 years. The Italians are pissed. The Germans are pissed. Everybody's mad about the Treaty of Versailles, except for the French and the British, right? The Republicans in the Senate are mad about it, and as a result, we never join the League of Nations. So boy, oh boy, oh boy. The League of Nations is much weaker as a result. And yeah, we're going to leave it right there. You should know this story at least a little bit. Okay, end of the progressive era. Back home, we have women's suffrage movements still going on. We have advances being made across the country. We have women using patriotic imagery, right? Women's suffrage is coming. We give our men our lives. Will you not give us the vote? Kaiser Wilson, ha ha ha, isn't that funny? We're fighting Kaiser Wilhelm, and so they call him Kaiser Wilson. Have you forgot about the Germans? They're not governed. Well, women aren't governed either. Take the beam out of your own eye. Say that to your mother sometime. See how she likes it. She won't. The National Women's Party comes along. We've already heard about them a little bit with Alice Paul. They engage in more radical civil disobedience. Wilson drops his opposition in 1920. Women get the right to vote. After that, Alice Paul says, let's have the Equal Rights Amendment. Doesn't pass, but we've already talked about that. Prohibition movement gains traction and is actually passed during this period, right, immediately following World War I. Oh, the sadness, the sadness. Goodness, goodness. And as always, I run out of time for the Red Scare, so let's move real quickly to the Great Migration. As a result of World War I, many African Americans moved to the north. Done. End of rant.